Keep saying
I think she wanted to, I think she was hoping to come and then take off.
Mike's almost always here, man.
I don't see it. And Mike won't be here.
Mike, I expected, and Andrew, I expected. The plan was to induce labor today. And Sarah's
Something good to eat. It's like the babies, what did you drop?
she's gonna hold his hand.
How are they doing?
Okay.
It's been a long
Gemma
time. I'm out
just
of
went to
practice.
bed. We'll see if she went down for the night or not, but she was screaming and unhappy, so I think the medicine's wearing off. It's been like 4 hours, and I think it's, they're both getting super congested. I gave him a bath before I left and laid him down, and
Because baths are supposed to help them.
It's approximately 7 o'clock.
It is exactly 7.
Exactly 7 o'clock. So let's start the Sun Valley Board of Directors meeting for Thursday, October 11, and call to order and roll call. Andrew has a family event happening tonight, and
We should be honest and say what's going on.
well, I don't want to jinx anything.
I
I'll just
agree.
say congratulations, and I hope everything works out very well. No, David. No.
Everything comes out well.
Yeah, I know. It's like, God, and I worked so hard not to say that, and then he did it instead. Okay. Let's see, and Mike is not able to come. Probably won't be here either meeting this month.
He would attend if Amsterdam had direct connections.
I'm sure the time difference would have been very pleasant for him. Odell, it might be late, but I haven't heard from him. Okay. So I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a quorum. All righty. Agenda. Any changes, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, sir, on the enduring asset list, we put it in because Director Bradley had asked to have it deferred to a later date. But candidly, I would recommend that the enduring asset list discussion be deferred to the next long-range planning committee.
Well, why don't we talk about that when it gets on the agenda?
Yes, sir.
Righty, anything else? All right, seeing nobody jump to the fore, unless there's an objection, I'll rule that the agenda has been adopted by acclamation. And now we go to announcements. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we've started getting ballots back already.
We started what?
We started getting ballots back for the AGM. We're at 192 right now.
Is that low or high, or my gut tells me
I
that's a
say
little
low, but we had a holiday in there and we hadn't gotten mail the last time we counted, so we had a low count. The other thing that I would ask all members, please do not put your ballots in the county box that's by security. We've put a sign there. They've always been really generous and returned our ballots to us. But please tell everybody that's not our ballot box. Our only ballot box is in the administration office.
This year?
They're not open yet. They don't open until the 17th of October. They will open that box. Right now, it's currently locked.
Okay, okay. It's nice that they would allow a sign up nearby.
Yes.
All right, any other announcements? Yes, sir.
Once again, I'd like to announce the event that we're having here in the dance barn on Sunday, the 21st of this month, which is the candidate forum for our 6 board members that are running for 3 positions. And also, we're going to have them followed by our 2 local candidates for our district for Congress, for the state congressional district. And Deborah Lekanov and Michael Petrish are both going to be here on the stage at the same time. And if there are people in the community or even outside the community who would like to come and become more informed in their vote for this fall, one of them will be representing us in Olympia in January. And so I'm looking forward to that event, and it should be lively.
Well, I'm kind of proud that they're actually showing up. That's not common.
I confirmed again with them yesterday, both.
Super. Yes, ma'am.
Another announcement? This coming Thursday, October 18, there is an exercise. I don't know how many of you are on top of what's happening in the emergency preparedness arena, but there have been a lot of things going on this coming week. There will be a lot of things going on this coming week to talk about the possibility of an eruption of Mount Baker. And one of the things that the emergency preparedness group is doing, there is a volunteer mobilization center group that will be setting up a volunteer reception center here in the dance barn. And it simulates what might happen a few days after a disaster. People all say, oh, I want to help, what can I do? And this particular group actually would interview and just take in information about individuals, about what their skills are, what they'd like to do, what they're capable of doing. Do they have a chainsaw? Are they good with paperwork? Those kinds of things. And so we're doing an exercise to simulate that on Thursday. We need people who are available to just come in, spend 15 or 20 minutes here, and sign in as if they were a volunteer, so these people get practical experience in doing that. There's a whole very complex system that's set up because the end result is each person who comes in to volunteer gets an emergency worker card, temporary worker card, so that they can help and are well informed and are safe in whatever it is they're doing. So I just ask anyone who might be available, stop in here sometime between 11 and 2 and spend a few minutes with us. And if you don't want to sign up and go through the process, at least learn a little bit more about what it might be so that you might be better prepared in the event of an emergency.
Are you looking for people to pretend that they have skills?
Yep.
If that helps?
Perfect,
the
whatever.
thing? Okay.
If
all
you
right.
come in and you say, hey, and that's awesome.
This is an exercise for the receiving team.
Yes, for them to be able to hone their skills so that it will go more smoothly in, not if we have a disaster, but when. There's going to be something that will probably happen. We just need to be prepared.
Let's hope it's not a lahar. I've been reading
We're
too many,
hoping not.
too many stories just within the last
And
week
they're
or so
just not
about
fun stories either.
about
Yeah.
Pompeii and Herculaneum, and it's not pleasant. Okay, I'll add on to that. 2 days before, on the 16th, I don't have the time in front of me, the elected officials in the county are having their own get-together at the Whatcom Unified Field that's out near the airport. And if anybody on the board would like to participate, just send me an email and I'll give you the information that I got from Norm. So we're all invited.
Right now, I think you and I are,
Well, you and I are the ones that got the notice, but the way it was told to me from Mike is that the whole board is invited.
That's correct. And it's pretty big news that we are being invited as elected officials because of, and I think Henry might speak more to this when he talks. That is highly unusual, and but it's because they respect what we're doing already in the area of emergency preparedness here in Sudden Valley. So it's a new thing for us to be invited to that.
It's a new thing, it's another exciting bit of recognition, but it's also very critical that at least somebody from the board shows up. I plan on being there, and I know Eric does
If
as
you
well.
received an email, could you please forward it to the entire board?
I absolutely will. And all I can say is that we have a big responsibility because we have a huge community here. So Okay, any other announcements? I think, Mitch, did you have a few that you wanted to talk about in the announcement, or do you want to talk about them at some other time?
I think I'll just go for it some other time.
Okay, all right. All right then, any other announcements? All right, seeing none, property owner comments and board comments. Well, I guess there's a board comment. All right, there you go.
One comment, I guess this would be a good time to ask. Last year, possibly even the year before too, about 2 months from now, we're going to be freezing in here. And we talked about getting the radiant heaters or some other way of keeping us warm in the winter months. And I was wondering if anyone had that on their radar again. And if not, I'd love to put it on that long-range radar.
Let's have it on less than a long-range radar. So we might not want to be looking for heaters at the same time everybody else in the county is looking for heaters.
All right, that was my comment.
Okay,
I don't want to freeze 2 months from now.
that's all right. That's why they invented sweaters, Eric. You can handle it.
Wearing one
You're-
now.
You're a Marine. All right, any other comments? Yes, sir.
Yes, I have a 2-page letter, but I'm not going to read it, but just a few thank yous. With this WUC IOA, there's been a big transition, of course, but, and a lot of folks complain about that, myself included, but we've had, you might say, a 7-year hiatus or respite from that, because back in August of 2011, there was a motion, and it was passed by the board to combine the dues and the budgets. And For Change came in and said, wait a minute, stop. You gotta rescind that. And thank you, Linda, and Tammy Wooden, and Matthew Goggins, and Mark Bevins were on that board that made those changes. And not too long afterwards, of course, we had the legal battle that came about, and I was on the task force, because what also happened was our legal counsel had been fired. So I was on the task force to bring in new legal team. And one of my litmus tests was somebody that could say we could win that. And we had 3 different legal teams that came in. And Schmelik, Sitkin, and Davis were the ones that said, I think we can win. And we went ahead with it. And obviously, I think a lot of you on the board realized that process, and we went through that. We lost at the local, took it to the appellate court, won, and they decided they wanted to take it to the Supreme Court, and we went ahead and did that. And the Supreme Court threw it back to the appellate court, and we won there. So as a result, we've had 7 years, you might say, of the right to vote for the dues, good and bad, because it had its advantages and disadvantages, of course. And Larry, thank you, because during that period of time, you played, I think, a solid leadership role in that, whenever we took that. Your legal expertise and what have you have worked us through that process. So I know we are where we are, and good, bad, and indifferent, whatever the case was, we won some, lost some, and we are where we are. But anyway, for that process and things that went through there, and I've worked with a number of you for a number of years in that, I just wanted to thank all of you that I had the opportunity to work with over that period of time. And thank you, Larry, for your guidance on a lot of that. And Linda, you're the only one here now. Thank you very much. So anyway, I just wanted to, it's a little of both. It's the good news, the bad news, and that's the nature of life, I guess. And sometimes I look for the Aristotelian golden mean. What is too much or what too little? You have to make decisions sometimes, and that's where we are. So anyway, I just wanted to express some of my thoughts about that and to thank those folks that were involved in that process.
Thank you, sir. Okey doke. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, let's go to the consent agenda. Are there any changes?
We do have a presentation first.
Oh,
Presentations?
I'm sorry, it's not listed on my agenda. Oh,
Really?
I'm looking at the wrong piece of paper, no wonder. There we go, presentation. Sorry.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to address you tonight. My name is Henry Renteria. I'm a member of the Emergency Preparedness Committee here in Sudden Valley. And I've been asked to give you a very brief overview of a tabletop exercise we just conducted last Saturday. So let me assure you I'm not going to take a long time. There's no presentation, no whistles and bells. Thank you for the opportunity. Let's start with a little saying that I'm always aware of. Disasters can happen at any time, anywhere. The problem is disasters don't happen everywhere all the time. If they did, we'd be much better prepared. As you've seen on television in the last few days, the destruction of the hurricanes, the tsunami that happened across the world, we have some very major issues that we have to deal with. I call your attention also today, there's an editorial in the New York Times that appeared this morning by Malcolm Roberts, and it's entitled, "Why We Ride Out Life-Threatening Storms and Do Other Crazy Things." And he comments about, this is an insurance executive as opposed to an emergency responder. And he talks about the refusal of human beings to acknowledge and appreciate the gravity of a disaster, having never been through one. That we just don't seem to deal with these things. His answer to this is denial. That we're all in denial about these things. And he defines denial as hope on steroids. And that's really what this is about. We know we are subject to all sorts of issues throughout the country. We have our own specific issues here in Sudden Valley. And that's why you have an Emergency Preparedness Committee that's been led by two board members, Carol Houghton, and our chair, Michael D'Angelo, as well as former board member, Grace Shatner. We've had these volunteers working their butts off for quite some time, and they've accomplished quite a bit, but there's much more to do. Sudden Valley has its own unique issues, from weather-related events to the Mount Baker exercise that's coming up. There's a reason they're doing that exercise, because there's a real potential of that volcano going off and providing quite a bit of havoc in this area. But your committee has been working to recruit volunteers, provide training, and provide assistance to the staff with respect to responding to an event here in Sudden Valley. We are a major population source for Whatcom County. And I'm going to comment a little bit more on that about this exercise coming up. And there's a real issue here and importance of us having a relationship with the county and them understanding what we have here in Sudden Valley and the risks that we have, as well as potential for their response. Through this committee, we've organized volunteers. We have a very strong CERT program, which is Community Emergency Response Teams, that's sponsored by the county. We have one of the strongest amateur radio programs I've ever seen in my career. We have quite a few active amateur radio operators here. We have other programs that are also going to be in effect or are ongoing, but there's a lot of work being conducted by volunteers, and these volunteers are working very closely with staff. Our role of the committee is to make sure our emergency plan is up to date, and we keep it updated and provide the training we need and the awareness we need for our community. We do have some challenges. This tabletop exercise we conducted last Saturday was the first time we've done anything like this. Let me just explain what a tabletop is. It's basically a roundtable discussion with invited participants that represent staff, volunteers, and this, for the first time, we invited county representatives, and not only did they show up, we had representatives from the city of Bellingham. Lake Whatcom Water was invited. They were going to attend. They couldn't at the last minute, but they provided us with some very interesting comments about the role of Lake Whatcom Water in this particular exercise, which was designed to be the scenario of a heavy weather-related flooding incident here in Sudden Valley with respect to flooding of Austin Creek, damage to our major arteries, Lake Whatcom Boulevard, Lake Louise, the issue of people being cut off from the rest of the county here in Sudden Valley, and all of a sudden finding ourselves with 6,000 plus people in need of all sorts of things, but no way to get in and out. So this was we could have picked all sorts of scenarios to test, but we wanted to test something that was real, something that's already happened before. And this was a real eye-opener for us. What were the major lessons? Well, major lessons here, our objective was to test the plan and make sure that we have things in order and what we need to provide in the future. But our major lessons is we found that it was essential to work with our volunteers and our government agencies, as well as the private sector and community-based organizations. All of these organizations who were invited are going to have a major role responding to Sudden Valley, not just during an event, but even in the post-event process, the recovery period, which in and of itself is a huge issue. Recruitment of more volunteers is a big necessity for us. We are a very small committee. We have a lot of able bodies, but in a multi-day, multi-week event, we're going to drop like flies. We need people to come in and replenish that supply of volunteers that we would have responding to the initial impact. So recruitment of more people is essential. Training is essential, and training is a high priority. We need to identify residents with special skills and identify residents that are part of a vulnerable population, which we do have a lot of here in Sudden Valley. We need to identify what agencies and programs exist here in Sudden Valley that could also benefit from either something more official, such as memorandums of understanding with our private industry that's here, our Sudden Valley Market, our restaurants, even all of the other businesses that are here in Sudden Valley. While there's an implied understanding that if something happens, we're in all this together, it's important that we have some established guidelines and understanding with these businesses, because while we're first responding to events, everybody wants to help. But after the event's over, the bills start coming. And this is where I feel you as a board of directors need to address this as far as what our fiscal responsibilities are going to be after an event and how we're going to cover some of these expenses. There are some government programs that would help us, but as a private business, Sudden Valley cannot depend on some of these programs that are geared towards citizens and nonprofits. Individual citizens will get help, but even then they will have to be appraised of what's out there. The role of our staff, their responsibilities, the role of our equipment. What do we have here in Sudden Valley that can respond to these types of events? The county and the city were very impressed with what we have here in Sudden Valley. But I also caution you, what we have here that we can respond to, if nothing happens here, guess what? They want to come over here and ask for our stuff. And we got to be ready for that. When they start asking for dump trucks or staff or equipment that we own and operate, if we don't have an understanding of how that equipment is going to be replaced if it's damaged, or if it's replaced if something happens to it, then that's where some of the problems will occur. So the fact that they were there and understood what we have to offer, but they also understood that our priority is here first. Our citizens, our residents, our staff. Okay, moving forward, let me comment a little bit on the Mount Baker exercise. I can't emphasize how important it is that some of you attend this. If nothing more, to meet your elected official counterparts and hopefully to ask some tough questions. You need to hold the county's feet to the fire. Does the county have in their emergency plan how to respond to Sudden Valley? Not just respond to the county, respond to Sudden Valley. Because we have over 6,000 people in this area. That is a huge headache for the county. I know it because I've seen some of their plans. They do not address Sudden Valley specifically, and they must, they should. Our staff has been very aggressive about attending meetings there and being in contact with them, so there is dialogue, and I really, it's got to give you credit for that. It's a lot of dialogue between our staff and the county staff. But when it hits the fan, depending on who gets, who needs the resources the most, or who has the loudest political voice, they will get the resources. So we have to have our own voice in this process. There is a special meeting with elected officials, so obviously other elected officials in the county are going to be there, or their staff, so it'll be very important to attend that and to ask those questions. Going forward, also, we need to have you continue to support our committee, our Emergency Preparedness Committee, and all the work that we're doing. We are very anxious to provide you with ongoing reports of what it is that we're doing and what it is that we need in Sudden Valley, and we'll keep you appraised of that. We need to remember also that there are some fiscal issues here, and there is an old saying in emergency management that for every dollar you spend on mitigation, you save $4 in recovery and long-range costs. That is a true statement. The more planning we do ahead of an event, the better off we're going to be afterwards. This is not about if a disaster strikes Sudden Valley, it's when a disaster strikes. So with that, I will close, and I will leave you with some words of the wise, as I love to do. If we don't prepare, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. But always remember, immortality can always be assured by spectacular error. So keep that in mind as we go forward, because if you want to be known and have your plaque up somewhere, it could be for a lot of different reasons. So thank you for your time. I appreciate the ability to bring you this information, and like I said, in the future, we'll provide you with more. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Sure. Thank you, Henry. Seriously, thank you so much for your expertise as well as your participation. Yeah, we do have a question, apparently.
I actually have a comment. I think one thing that I was surprised at, but very pleased to hear, is John Gargett, who is the head of the Department of Emergency Management for Whatcom County, said that he lives in Birch Bay, and he said that he thinks of Sudden Valley as the poster child, and he is waiting and wondering why his area does not do the things that we're doing here in Sudden Valley. So we're considered pretty impressive from the standpoint, even though we're a small
Leader,
group.
not poster child.
We are leaders, yes, we are leaders in this, and so a lot of people are copying what we're doing, but it's hard to get volunteers, and we're finding that true too.
Well, as Henry said, it's very easy for people to ignore issues. How many times I've heard talking about the Michael and the hurricane down there, that people had they moved back into the area and they build the same old stuff that they had before and wait for the next time. So let's avoid that if we possibly can. Any other questions? Okie doke. Now, looking at the current agenda instead of the draft agenda, we'll go to the consent agenda. And we've got 4 items there. Does anybody have any changes or corrections? Yes, ma'am.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Unless somebody objects, why don't we accept by acclamation? All right, that's a done. Now, let's go to continuing business and any voting. I'm not sure that much voting will be necessary. While we do that, I think I'll toss the ball back in your court again. There were a couple of things. A final report on the emergency work hour situation and whether or not everybody who asked for it got it. An update on PSC and their road repairs. I noticed as I drove in that it's looking pretty darn good. Now I want to see about the road out if it looks as good. And I'm curious if there's any update from their arborist on our trees, because I will be extremely pissed if those things start dying. What else? Oh yeah, talk about the impact of the recent bad weather and smoke on golf. and whether the income there is doing okay. Bunch of topics.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. Yeah, let's talk about PSC. They finished their extension of their underground wires to increase the confidence of the electrical distribution to Gate 2. We had been increasingly receiving outages over the last number of years, and so they've replaced those underground lines, and with that, tore up our roads pretty good. And as they opened up our roads, we had several issues. One was not damaging the trees coming into Gate 2. We had quite a back and forth on that, and agreed that they would have an arborist monitor all of the underground cutting in Gate 2 entrance to ensure that the trees did not suffer, and that they would do the work with the least amount of damage to our trees. They did reroute from the north to the south. Instead of going, they originally were going to cut on the ingress line, and then they cut on the outgoing line, and they cut in the center of the road where we asked them to cut. They did hire an arborist. We have not received the report. However, they were having issues about wanting to come back this season and repair the road, and we gave them some choices, and they chose the wise path and repaired the roads, and this is repair number 1. Now there are 2 repairs that have to occur. So this is the first, and they have to come back and do a second one. And they have to do the second one before we do the overlay, and we have delayed the overlay until June 1. But we have agreed that they owe us a second repair. And so they have patched the roads. They did a hot patch on it. We monitored the project. They did it to a standard, to WestDOT standards, and we're very comfortable with the repair work that they did. So they did the repair work as specified. They owe us the arborist report, and they have to do patch number 3 prior to us microsealing the road. So they are complying to the agreements made as part of their permits. All right?
Good.
Let's talk about overtime hours. I copied the board on an email that we notified the members that right 5 days before the end of the dirt season, which is October 31st, because of weather delays, we were going to allow contractors to have extended work hours.
He meant September.
Okay.
Did I say, October?
Yeah.
September. First day of my new term. To September before the end of dirt season, that we were going to give them extended work hours. We turned down 3 contractors who had not been working on their projects leading up to that period of time. We said, look, if you haven't been putting in the hours necessary to button up your projects, we see no reason to give you permission to disrupt the community because you did not plan accordingly. And so 3 were denied. Quite a few were given approval, and not all of their hours were the same. In fact, the hours varied differently. It was because it was driven by the work that they had to do and what had to be accomplished before the end of the dirt season. There were a couple of fines given out by the county to different contractors, and that's between the county and the contractors. Now, if they have not completed that work, we may increase their deposit next year. But at this time, they have now all buttoned up as they were supposed to. Several of the contractors took exception with the hours that we gave them, and we rode herd on them very tightly. There were some complaints. Some of the neighbors complained, some of the members complained, But the issue is that we've been trying to get the contractors to not spend 2.5 years building a house. And that in our valley, there is a limited amount of hours that they can work on homes. And so getting the foundations in was an important issue, and then covering up all the dirt. That was the driver. Now they can work on the interior of the house, the exterior of the house throughout the rest of the year. They have until October, the end of October, for extended daylight hours, and then they have reduced hours, normal hours after that. Now, if they're working on the inside of the house, we have no issue. But if you want to create sound that will go beyond the boundary of your property, you will have to obey the hours of work that are specified that the board has approved. At this time, we then did an audit of every construction project on the Wednesday following the end of dirt season, and letters went out to every one of the contractors saying, here is what we find when it comes to cleanliness of your projects, heavy equipment on your projects, your signs posted on the projects, buttoning up your projects. There were a list of 6 items, and we audited all 50 projects. And letters went out to them. I received one complaint today from one of the builders saying, well, I don't agree with this, and we will have a conversation tomorrow, but it's not really a debate at this point. This is the requirement, and this is what you're going to have to meet, because these were the rules, and you agreed to those rules when you signed on to do the construction project. And if you don't agree, then we'll issue a notice of violation after the agreed upon time to correct. And then that will be for the board and the appeals committee to decide how they want to handle it. But I think the overtime hour was required, it was necessary, it was needed. They hit some early season, wet, unseasonable time, and it slowed them down. At this point, I think that it worked out well. And we did it last year. I think that I would recommend that we do it again next year if they encounter the same problem. We shouldn't plan to give them those times, but because they were delayed and they were impacted, it's a relationship between us and the contractors, get them to button up and expedite their construction projects so they don't take 2.5 years to finish the job. Is that correct? That's what our agreement is. We want to give them every opportunity to get the projects done without having to have 3-year construction projects in this valley. So they have 30 days after the dirt season to get the heavy equipment off their property. And we've offered them opportunities to store their heavy equipment in the Gate 5 overflow if necessary, but they will get their heavy equipment off or they will get a fine. As for smoke on the golf course,
Could I back up and ask a quick question about the construction projects? You mentioned that we have 50 of them that are ongoing right now.
I believe that we have some 50 projects, 36 that were initiated, between 36 and 38 that were initiated this year, but a total of 50 right now that are active.
Right, so that's actually a great point to make, I think, that there are between 12 and 15 projects that are continuing projects, and we don't want these 38 or so, 35 to 38, to become continuing projects.
That is correct. The ACC and the association have worked together to come up with what we jointly believe are a set of criteria to give the builders every opportunity that the rest of the county outside of the watershed might have to finish their projects in a reasonable period of time. And then if they do not complete them, the ability for the association to financially incentivize them to not extend those projects. And we are not looking for 2.5-year construction projects in our community. The county will give ad nauseum, ad hoc, $100 extensions every 6 months. They don't care. We are an association, we live here, and we do care, and we do not want to incentivize builders to have 6-month extension after 6-month extension after 6-month extension. You concur? Yep. And we also do not want them to have their heavy equipment stored in residential streets.
Thanks.
So with regard to the nasty weather that caused the need for that hour and all the other stuff that impacted golf, how are we doing on golf?
Golf is doing well. Golf, I'm going to take a number off the top of my head, and the number will be rough, but I think roughly we're looking at $40,000 better than this time last year. It's not as good as it was a month ago, but it's still about 36 to 40,000 better than this time last year. Do you want to come up with a closer number?
I don't have a closer number. I'm just finishing up September's financials, so that will be available at the next finance meeting and board meeting.
We are doing better than this time last year. The smoke caused a lot of delays. In fact, there were at least 4 days that we had to send our entire staff home because it was unsafe to breathe. And we were having a problem inside the building, breathing. So I was letting staff go. The smoke might be as bad at your home, but that's your choice if you want to stay there. You can or leave. But it did hit us and it hurt us somewhat. Last weekend, the Winter Series had over 140 teams play. They had to turn away teams. They had a waiting list greater than they can handle, and they had to turn them away. So our golf program is growing. It's growing well. Brian is marketing. He's doing a very good job marketing. And I'm afraid that at this point, for the other golf courses, we consider theft an acceptable measurement of piracy that is working for us.
And I'll just make a note on that. In years past, years ago, when I first got on the board, a point was made that we couldn't steal clients from other golf courses because they'd turn around by dropping prices, for instance, or doing something else, because we'd have the same thing happen to us. Well, the market has changed. Times are different.
There's a golf course that's having a problem in the county. I'm not going to get into names. They have had to replace air conditioning units on their main building just so they could get to the point where they could sell off their infrastructure because they haven't maintained it. All right? So we are very fortunate that it's costing somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.06 a month per member for us to have a golf course here in the association, and other courses that may be failing, well, their members still golf, and they're looking for a place to play. And we have the #1 rated golf course in Whatcom County. And so because we have this ability, we are gaining members.
And that's a huge turnaround from where the situation was before Brian and Jacob showed up. The golf course had sunk to a low period, and it's taken a lot of time. I wish it were faster, but it takes money, and so it takes time given our strict budget, and it's paying off. It's paying off really well.
And we didn't start a price war by lowering prices so that it drove everybody down. What we're doing is providing a better product, and this is what is bringing people here.
We're providing a much better product.
Yeah.
And we're below market. Now, to that end, Madam Treasurer, at the next Finance Committee, which you will not be at, but your trusted deputy will be at, the golf pro, the head of golf, Brian. There's Brian, who's the head of the golf enterprise, and then there's a head pro. Brian will be coming in with proposals, and that will include an increase in next year's golf program. He has already floated this past the golf club. They are expecting it. We are below market. He expects to increase fees approximately 12%. And so what we were looking at next year for an $88,000 loss, Brian is now portending to be in approximate range of where we are this year. And So our loss will continue consistent with this year, not the $88,000 loss. And in addition to that, we're going to come in with a capital extension program to, our last payment for golf carts will be in April. And we are going to come in with a capital extension plan for our golf carts to extend them for several more years. So we will not have payments on our golf carts, and they will remain in a high quality and be valued by people wanting to rent them. And we will come in with a program that will save us money and extend them, and they will have more residual value at the end of the 2 years. So they are looking at that option. And we are looking at expanded golf marketing. The program is working very hard to increase market share and increase membership fees, so that the people that play are the people that also will cover a good portion of this increase, and keep the cost low and move the program forward.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Linda.
Mitch, a couple of questions. On the PSE work, where since I'm assuming phase 2 isn't going to happen until after the winter, who's going to do the fog line? Because there's a lot of that goes up into gate 2 and on the right-hand side of the road. There's no fog line there at all?
That's a very good question, Linda. So we're having a conversation with them about the stripe in the center and and the fog line.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I had is, we're talking about these OT hours for builders and stuff, and I know we want people to build in here. I don't know what ACC does, but is there a cutoff time for where we do not accept starts on buildings because they're going to run into these problems conceivably with that first year where they're putting in their foundations?
I think that's a question for you to have with ACC.
Okay, can do.
Rich, is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. We do enforcement. ACC does approvals, and we do not cross the line between the two.
I just think it would be, like if some people start late, I understand the whole thing of where you're saying if somebody's not working on their project, sorry. I get that.
We turned 3 of them down, and one of them is a name that a lot of people are aware of. One of the biggest builders in the county, and that person got turned down for one of their projects.
But it's, I guess I really hope that for some reason there can be, I know a lot of people were upset by, not knowing, who got what. Yes, from what I heard, the builders contacted and gave the letters to the members and stuff. But I think sometimes people get real frustrated with, I spent $600,000 for my house and I get to listen to this until 8 o'clock at night. And I guess I just would like to see a more even distribution. Yeah, it's nice to see these houses built, and yes, it adds, they pay dues as it is, but they pay more when they're developed and people contribute to the community. But it always upsets me because it seems like people who have moved in here into homes sometimes take a back seat, that's all. And I think sometimes they feel that way, so.
They may. We do our best. And as David said, sometimes there's good and sometimes there's bad. And we can't satisfy everybody, but we do our best. I know Rich and staff work hard in that regard. So also does Mitch. And any event.
He's staff.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other staff.
All of us.
All you guys. Okay, let's move on to the GM search. And so I'll turn that over to the team.
Okay.
There is one question, and that was...
Maybe I will have answered it by the time I give my report.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you. We had our last conversation with...
I gotta check my throat.
I was gentle. The last conversation with Jeff Evans, who's leading the search for us on a week ago today, the 4th, and basically just tying up some of the loose ends on producing the posting for the position. We based on input from Rich, asked him if he would extend his guarantee to 1 year on the agreement. He had said that if we find somebody and they do not stay for 180 days, that he will go back and do the search again at just the cost to him. And, but he said, okay, you know, he will extend that to 1 year. So we did get that signed and sent off to him. There were some things that we needed to send. He had a very nice write-up, just the first proposal, but the pictures were kind of, you know, nondescript, the ones that he was using. He'd pulled them off a website or something. So Carol went and found some, actually from staff, some very much nicer, more attractive pictures.
We showed a picture of what the board looks like after 5-hour meetings.
Right.
We banned that one.
We looked at the job description. He sent a standard GM contract to us, which we haven't done any reviewing on yet, but I would like for us to, in the next couple of weeks, look at that so that at the point at which we identify somebody, we can have a contract in place to be offered to this person. I got an email from, the three of us got the email from Evans yesterday, and he was saying the search was launched this morning starting at about 10 a.m. East Coast time, and it was promoted in all of the following locations. The position announcement was emailed to over 400 large-scale managers across the world that are part of an internet exchange. 2, the position was posted on the national CAI website. You can go to CAI online and then hit the Community Managers drop-down bar and click on the job market. 3, the position was posted on the CMIA, the Community Managers International Association website. Then sent an email to all of its members telling them that a new position announcement had been posted. 4, the chapter executive directors and chapter presidents for the Washington and Oregon chapters of CAI each received an email with the position announcement. And 5, approximately 20 individual managers that have expressed interest in past searches were emailed the position announcement. He says, so we're off and running full steam. I spent much of my afternoon fielding emails and phone calls regarding the position, and we will talk to him again tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock. I have here the position information, and with a request to sending your applications to him and with the address. Is this something we want to just post online on the website so that, you know, everybody can see it? And if there's anybody local who is interested in this position, they may send their applications in to Jeff Evans.
I strongly believe so. I think there's several people in the community who have expressed interest in being the GM for the community. I think we should tell everyone, you've all said you think you could be the GM. Here's where you would apply.
Yeah, okay, so I will send that to you, and you can put it up online tomorrow morning. Yeah,
yes,
okay. All right, so anything else that you want to share at this time?
I think that covers it.
We're good? Okay, and I'll see you tomorrow afternoon.
Great. Superb. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. The next one, enduring asset list, and there is an attachment here. We had deferred this issue. Mitch had a suggestion that it go to long-range planning.
I so move.
I would second that we table it
Until the new long-range planning committee is formed and that they then address it in that meeting.
Okay, moved and seconded. Yeah, and the reason that I support that is for the very simple one that we still don't have a full quorum on the long-range planning committee. We've got 2 or 3 people who volunteered and have stepped up, but we're going to have one meeting essentially to record the fact that we don't have a quorum. So we can't do anything this year. So next year, hopefully, we'll have a quorum, or there are, one idea has been floated. This is somewhat off topic, but basically to the board consider doing an ad hoc planning task force or something less formal than a committee, because we have to go ahead and start planning even if we don't have the full bylaw required number. So we need to find a way to take the people we can get and start running with it.
Could I say something to that?
Please go. Well, let's wait on that.
Okay.
Because that was somewhat off topic from the enduring asset list and the subject of the motion, which is to defer it to next year's long-range plan.
You're right.
Call the question.
Okay, questions called? Unless there's an objection, all in favor, please indicate. For tabling this until the next long-range planning committee is established. Okay, that's a unanimous. Okay, now, sir, thank you.
I'd like to point out that in our bylaws, we have a standing committee, the Long Range Planning Committee, that has what has become an onerous requirement this year. It has to have 11 voting members and 1 staff member, 2 board members and 9 community members, and a staff member. And there simply hasn't been the ability to get enough volunteers for that committee this year to even have a quorum to have a meeting. And so, unfortunately, I think that you're going to be stuck with, as you said, a report at the end of the year saying couldn't do anything. I think the idea of if we can't get enough members to a standing committee, but to have a function that we know we have to accomplish. If we could appoint an ad hoc committee that has a much lesser quorum requirement to do something along the lines of a committee that simply can't meet, I think that's worthy of consideration next year. But
So
we might know more in November, December, how many people want to sign on to the new long-range planning committee.
Perhaps we can consider discussing this as part of the long-range planning committee report.
Sure,
And
yeah.
at the AGM, so that we can hopefully spark a little interest. Okay, so this is tabled, and we've dealt with what's likely for next year. Stormwater Utility Advisory Committee update. Okay.
At your request, I was contacted by Ingrid. She
Yeah.
came, and
County staff, yeah.
County staff came, and they began looking for 20 different locations, 24 different locations in the community where they would be able to set GIS coordinates up to say, this is definitely grass, this is definitely impervious location, this is under shrub, this is open to air, to test out their new system for determining whether or not something is an impervious surface.
They've got aerial mapping that they're going to do, and they want to double check to see if that is accurate. So they came here to look at it on the ground and then compare it to what the aerial report says.
Thank you, sir. You sent them my way. We gave them the time. They went out. They did it. It's done.
Good, good. Now, again, to remind everybody, this is a utility district, and so there will be some sort of a utility fee structure involved. That process is taking longer than the county had hoped for, and so that won't happen in 2019. In order for it to happen in 2019, it would have to be basically ready today and to go for legal review for the county council to work on it and pass it, and then send it to the treasurer and the tax assessor so that it could be implemented in the property tax bill. That isn't going to happen. So it'll happen in 2020, and we still do not have a final readout on whether some of the discussed rate mechanisms are legally acceptable. So there have been some discussions, everything's public, it's not really secret. The current favored approach is to have basically a flat rate with a very small variable rate that would vary depending on how much impervious surface that you had. The committee's thought, I can't speak for the committee, I'll speak for me. I will say that that makes some sense to me because it spreads the cost to as many people in the watershed as possible, so that therefore the cost is as low as possible to every homeowner in the watershed. There's a certain amount of expenses that will be incurred for putting in facilities, and it's going to be borne by somebody. So the idea is to try and make it as fair as possible and as affordable as possible. But that's just one idea. It has to pass legal review to whether there can be a fixed element as well as a variable element. We think it's likely to pass, but we don't know yet. In any event, there'll be no fee until 2020, and county council action will probably take place sometime in the spring, because we'll be basically done with our work before New Year. That's just not enough time, not soon enough for the county to get done what they need to do. And if anybody has any questions about that, I'll be happy to respond as best I can. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I don't have a question for you, but for everybody that knows it, I got a survey in the mail from an independent, and I think it has to do with the stormwater district. It's,
I got one too.
yeah, it's a survey that you complete. It's sort of, it's done by an independent party. It sounds like the committee evidently, or the utility district requested this. I think it's from people that live in the watershed, asks a bunch of questions and then leaves you a nice area at the end to put any comments that you'd like. And I would encourage everybody to look in their mail and fill out the surveys.
I absolutely agree. No, this is not something that has involved the committee at all. We're just an advisory committee. We think about stuff. There's some contract professionals who are providing assistance. Right now, the big delay is we're waiting for their contracted assistants to actually get a chance to do some work, and then we'll start working on the issue again. This is something that's come out from the county, I suppose.
Yes. I think the county and the city.
That could well be.
I'll see if I can find the letter and I'll send you, I'll scan it and
Sure.
send it to you.
I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Okay, then we'll move on to new business. Impact of WECU's new banking system.
Great. So as many of you who bank with the WECU may know, they transitioned to a new online banking system. And their old online banking system meant that every single separate checking account that you had a separate online login. And their new banking system groups it together for you for those that are the same owners. However, they had a slight error when they grouped the accounts for Sudden Valley's business accounts. They're our local banking partner to make cash deposits. And they grouped that with the personal accounts of one of our check signers. And so that was made aware to me, and we got it sorted out, and they're now separated. All of the funds are accounted for, and the WECU has provided a letter for our auditors stating that those accounts are indeed separated, and I've been given verbal assurance that that won't happen again in the future. So at any rate, it's all sorted out now, but I did want to bring it to the attention of the board, so that way, just for full transparency.
Is there any way of knowing if we were the only institution that had to enjoy this?
I was told we were not the only institution.
Okay.
Yes. And I also let them know that I'd be reporting it to our board, just because I need to do that.
My understanding is that that got fixed within less than 24 hours.
Yes, it did. Correct.
Good. Okey-doke. Transfer a building deposit account. one of the accounts in WECU.
Correct. So this is a completely unrelated matter. I just want to make that very clear. In a completely unrelated matter, I would like to actually move our building deposit accounts to our main banking partner, the Mutual of Omaha Bank. So originally we had set up our building deposit account with the WECU so we could remain within FDIC compliance. And this was before we had our insured cash sweep accounts, which keep us in compliance with our main banking partner. But currently we have approximately $230,000 in our building deposit accounts because, as Mitch said, we have 50 builds. And additionally, we have a $135,000 deposit. It's not a deposit, a mitigation account at the WECU with the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District. They required that we have that mitigation account with a local bank. And so between those two funds, we are not in compliance. Our funds are not insured. And so I would like to move the building deposit accounts over to our main banking partner. And then we'll put some of those in the insured cash sweep accounts to maintain FDIC compliance.
So I suppose that calls for a motion, and I'd like that to come from the treasurer.
Well, I'm happy to do that. I'm not sure, but I will, let's just be safe. And I would move that we authorize our accounting manager to transfer the funds from or change the actual account from the local WECU account to our Mutual of Omaha Bank.
I would second that and have a question. Would this involve actually closing that account?
It will, yes. We'll close the bank account at the WECU that the building deposits are in, and we'll open up a new, it'd actually be two new bank accounts with the Mutual of Omaha Bank. One is the checking account and the other is the associated insured cash sweep account. That keeps us in compliance, and we'll also be earning a better interest rate. The insured cash sweep accounts earn higher interest than just a standard savings account at the WECU.
Thanks.
Does that
Any-
require an amendment?
No,
Well,
that
I was
does,
just asking a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
don't think so. Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question. How, and I've never asked this before because it's really never made any difference because it's handled that way. How are that transfer fee, how is that sent to us? I'm assuming from the closing companies. How's that done? And will they have to be informed of how that's going to happen?
So this has nothing to do with the transfer fee. So the building deposit accounts is not our money. So on the financial statements, you'll have a cash account for the building deposits and an associated liability of the equal amount. The building deposits are when a builder comes in and says he wants to build, they give us, or she, they give us $5,000. And then at the completion of the build, they get back all or most of their deposit, depending on what fines, fees, dues are outstanding at the end of the build. Almost everyone gets it all back.
So,
And then the transfer fee, to answer your question, generally comes through, the 1/4% comes through in closing, and we get a check from the title company is usually how it is transacted. And then at the end of the month, those funds get transferred into our once a month into the capital holding account for the transfer fee.
with the transfer fee, that, I guess, does that already go through our bank? Our banking partner, that's already an account with them?
It is. It's already an account with the Mutual of Omaha.
Yeah, and the building deposits, then yeah, definitely, we know that we need to put them. I was just concerned if there was a third party in there that needed to know
No third
that
party.
we changed it. Okay, thank you.
And, oh, yes, sir.
So I would imagine that the fact that it ballooned so quickly, that account balance ballooned so quickly, was because of the unexpected number of new builds this year.
With 35 new builds and $5,000 for each
Right.
build.
And that's more new builds than we've had since,
In 2014, we had 4.
yeah.
And so it's ramped up steadily, and we see no change in the amount of construction in the next couple of years.
Well, then I think that it's a great move to mitigate this.
I think we're required to
No, we
mitigate it.
are, we are.
Oh, certainly, but I guess the point that I was making was, we've ballooned to a point where we're not in compliance. Okay, and that's something that happened rapidly, and it wasn't something that was foreseen.
That's correct. So originally, the building deposit account was, $50,000 or $60,000, and you have to have a minimum of $50,000 in order to set up an insured cash sweep account. And then once it's set up, the minimum is reduced, but they make you have a higher minimum to open it.
Yes.
And so we wanted to stay within FDIC compliance with all of our accounts, so we thought, well, we'll just put that account at the WECU. But now with how much we have on deposit and the mitigation fund, we're out of compliance, and neither of those things were foreseen.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right.
Question?
Question is called. Unless there's an objection, all in favor, please indicate. That's unanimous. Make it so.
Thank you, Captain.
It's one of the best bosses I have ever seen. Okey doke. Gosh, I guess that leaves us at property owner comments and board response. Yes, sir, thank you for waiting. That's a TV.
Nope. Yep.
That's where you need to go.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Greg Young. My wife Rich and I have lived in Sutton Valley for the past 15 years.
Where at?
We live on Sandwick Point Court, which is always interesting because you have to spell it whenever you go on the phone, but we can tell people how
No, there is no D in Sandwich.
I know, we have a lot of variations, but the mail does seem to get to us. So, yeah, we've been here for 15 years. It appears we may have bought our forever home. We didn't really know that when we got here, but this is the first meeting I've been to. I hope to come to more in the future. And to explain my attire, I'm the city administrator for the city of Ferndale. And I've been for the past 15 years, so this is my work outfit. So I wanted to stop by and say hi to everybody, and again, you'll probably see hopefully a little bit more.
Well, I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming by.
I will say that we had an extremely enjoyable conversation in my office about 2 weeks ago, talking about the differences between being the city administrator of a municipal organization and that of a HOA. It was a fascinating conversation, exchanging the differences.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'd like to bring something up to the board if they have nothing else, and that is for you to consider.
Unless there's a board or member comment, okay? I don't see any other. Okay, fire away.
You're going to have elections in a couple weeks. You're going to have 3 new members. I believe that we should start talking about when you want to do orientation. All right, so we're going to have, we had talked about this. It would have been nice to have had the new general manager here at orientation. And so assuming that the orientation would occur sometime in January, but I think that we should start talking about when you want to do it.
Just, first of all, thanks. Second of all, I think January is too late. I think
I'd like to do December if that's possible,
Yeah.
early December,
late November, early December.
yes.
I've already been talking to council and risk. I will say that we're going to sign off on our D&O insurance here in the next couple days, and our premium has dropped, which is nice.
Very good.
All right, our risk has dropped, our premium has dropped. But December is fine, so I would like to ask the president of the board, please have the directors check their calendars, and let's find a date in December to set up for orientation, please. You'll have a brand new NNE, and so Linda, I would like to come to you. Yes, you can escape, but I will come to you, and I think that you have a new NNE, so I think that we should have a portion of NNE to brief them in, and we'll have 2 new but continuing members on ACC, 1 vote, and you're both in. But I think NNE this year, different than in complete change, and so I think it would behoove us to include a section on NNE this year.
Absolutely.
Are you encouraging the candidates to be part of this election process. so that
Well,
they can see what
because
goes
they're all
on.
being elected, it's a little hard to have
Yeah,
them.
that's true, that's true. Never
We
mind.
had one of the
Yeah.
members joined us when we had a recent meeting to go over, since there's only 3 of us now,
Yeah.
how we were going to handle being able to get everything done for the AGM. We think we've got it all figured out. But one of the things that I wanted to say is I know that I'm responsible for certification. I would ask the board, though, to consider when you're going to have your organizational meeting,
That's my next comment.
and
yeah.
also the next time when you're going to have your first meeting in November, as I'd kind of like a heads up, because that's normally when you get your certification. And I've got to put that meeting together so that we can present that to you.
I would hope that we would have our first actual meeting when you are ready to make that certification. So obviously, as soon as possible after the election. The organizational meeting, we have a little more flexibility.
As far as meetings go, typically, we have only had 1 meeting in November and 1 in December because of the AGM and then Thanksgiving, then just one in between. And then December, the second week in December is about, the only time that we can get together for that. Is there, Carol?
Carol?
I just wanted to mention that in looking at our timeline with our recruiter, Jeff Evans, though we can't tie it down yet because we don't really know, but his anticipated time for final interviews with candidates here in Sudden Valley is the first week in December. So that kind of ties that week up, and all we can do is say, that's what it's anticipated now, and we'll have to keep you posted as things progress.
That's right. We can't make any decisions now, but except encourage you to get the certification ready as quickly as possible, and then we'll work everything else out from there. Normally, in years past, my experience has been that the first organizational meeting of the board is often the day of the AGM. Once, I believe it was the day after. But
There's once we've waited a week, I believe you have 10 days after the AGM.
we might have done that at
max.
one time, but I much prefer to get it over with.
And this board can suggest, when the new board is elected, they will decide. But I think that we can suggest the same day as the AGM, we'll do organizational meeting. Is there any
Is there any objection to
objection to
that?
that? Okay.
Seeing none, why don't we go ahead and do
So did I
that?
just hear that you want to have the organizational meeting on the AGM?
In the evening after the
Immediately following.
AGM, yeah.
Evening after the AGM?
Or immediately following?
So Linda, I'm going to need you to give, as soon as the new entity is elected, to immediately brief whoever is going to be the chair to conduct the meeting and start it.
Yep. I also have kind of shared with them that in the past, sometimes Larry has Enemy do all of the officers, even though normally it's only supposed to be through the board president, and then he's to conduct, but we've kind of discussed that a little bit just to ready them and stuff, but as soon as they get together, and it wouldn't be hard for the board to meet. The MPR is always, if they wanted to meet down there, that's always reserved already that day for counting, and we have all of our stuff picked up by then, and we can just simply leave a few tables up. It would be nice, we could plan ahead of time. The one thing that took us last year was to be able to get everybody to the meeting. I know my master counter, I think her work hours are a little different, and sometimes she's out of area and stuff, but I will send her something and see how quickly we can put it together to do certification. Because that also has to include
That all
the
depends
new
on
meeting. Yep.
who's available.
Yep.
Yep.
If it were possible for the organizational meeting, I would prefer to just have that here at the same table that we have the AGM, because then we have the video and audio already set up.
You're saying in this room?
Yes.
Yes,
We have a problem with that, sir, because we'll have Christ the King Church on Sunday morning.
Oh, certainly, I'm talking about immediately after the AGM, have the organizational
That day,
meeting.
that
I'm
afternoon.
sorry,
Oh, just-
you're not doing it the day after.
Right.
No, this is the
Immediately
evening
following.
after.
Oh, evening, the
Right.
evening of.
Yeah.
Right.
No, because it's open to the public.
Yeah, immediately following the
Immediately
AGM,
following.
just like we did last year where we all went downstairs.
Got it.
And said, hey, let's put this off a couple of days. We can just do it right here.
We can do it right here. Well, we'll plan that, and if we need to
Okay.
change it, then we can change it.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Well, I'll advise staff to prepare the agenda accordingly for your review.
Okay, super. Yes, ma'am.
You know, given Henry Renteria's visit with us today and the importance of emergency preparedness, I would really appreciate him having some small portion of a presentation for the orientation.
That sounds reasonable. The only concern I have is the length of the orientation meeting.
I get it.
In the past, it has sometimes been difficult for attendees to handle that much time. 4 hours it's been in the past, and I'm not sure if we can fit it in, but I would love to do
It's
so.
important.
I agree with you. It's
I would like to see it as
crucial.
part of it.
Would it be possible to split the orientation into a couple of segments?
There's no reason not to.
And, the reason that I'm asking is because if there were 2 segments or even 3, then you could have the first section be with the attorney and another day and time be with the,
Okay, now you're talking orientation.
yes, orientation.
Not the organization.
Correct. Orientation.
Okay, all right.
And because the subjects that we cover in orientation are often related, but the attorney doesn't need to be here for the discussion of insurance.
I would not actually agree with that.
Yeah, the insurance and the legal are probably the two.
Okay,
I-
those were 2,
related.
I guess that was 2 bad examples, but
Right.
possibly there are
Having our-
ways to.
Having our attorney here throughout the entire orientation, then they hear the different issues that we're facing. And every year, our attorney has then said, wait, that's a change, or I have an issue with that. And I think it's important for the attorney, our counsel, to hear what is going on with the association in giving direction to the directors as important, as important as the directors to hear what's going on or their expectations from all the different people presenting. It is a learning experience both ways.
Understood. I was just trying to find a way to make it possible for more board members to be able to attend. Last year, we had a few board members who didn't get any of the information.
That's true. Why don't we keep that an open issue? We'll do our best. It's very understood that if we have more than one, we may need to have the attorney there at those, but again, they will be shorter. So we'll be paying for travel time, obviously, but not much else. Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Move to adjourn.
All right.
At 8:21.
At 8:21.
I second that.